Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Hustling Sideways podcast. I'm Alan Halas. I'm a music writer.
I'm Jim Love, and I'm a keynote and motivational speaker, and we are live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Yes. We are live from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
It's the 64th or 65th edition of Hustling Sideways. I don't remember. Which one is it?
I actually don't remember either, so
we usually
you'll find out
before we start.
I usually do check this before we start, and you know what? We didn't, so it's all right. It's in the title.
65. 65 sounds like we'll round up. That sounds like a nice middle number. Yeah, okay. And for
I like that. Yeah, it's in the title. Somebody found it. I am in the middle of a pretty busy day, and Jim is as well, so we're remote today. But normally we're in the same room together talking about it. I am about to go throw my first event at Summerfest, like right after this. So if my head goes in the wrong direction, sometimes that's, because I'm thinking about other things. I used to dismiss the little, like the side stages that were at Summerfest. And I would be like, well, it doesn't really matter. Like that's all kind of whatever. I am sorely mistaken. There is a lot of coordinating. There's a lot of planning that goes into that. And I will not dismiss those again. Jim, how you feeling today? How you doing?
I am good. I'm glad Summerfest is starting. For those who don't know, Summerfest is literally the world's largest music festival, and it is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin every summer, hence the name Summerfest. But we're pumped for it. I usually go 2 or 3 times, and now it's only on weekends, which is even better because me past 9 o'clock on a weeknight just doesn't really happen. So I'm glad to be. It's summer solstice was yesterday. I know this will come out later on. It's a good time. It's a good vibe in Milwaukee right now. The sun's out as we speak. It's 82 degrees outside. What the heck are we doing on a podcast? But that's all good.
Jim, you also mentioned to me like right before we started, you're like, how do you go on no sleep? The answer is I don't know. Yeah. Because like covering this stuff, I will be up early in the morning with my wife, and then I will be up late tonight covering a concert, and then getting it out before deadline tomorrow morning. I actually don't know how I do it, but I will, once I figure out the secret, I will let you know. You know what it is? It might be a midday nap.
I think Alan just sleeps for the majority of the day and pretends like that's what I'm catching on to. I
wish I could. It's like the movie Elf, where he's like, I got a full 40 minutes of sleep. Right. That's me, apparently.
That's good.
At some point, my body will just disintegrate and shut down. But in the meantime, here we are. Yes. Until that, we are here, and we have a great guest for you this week as well. We are talking with the Fractional CMO and copy chief. He also has a podcast and a newsletter. Let's bring him on all the way from Nebraska. We got Roy Furr. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me here. I'm excited to dive into Hustling Sideways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it is a new state. We have Nebraska is a new state. We are now up to like 25-ish new states.
We really should get one of those maps that has we could just put a little pin in them of all the different places that we've interviewed.
For our next sponsors, we'll have that be the sponsorship item that's perfect. Okay. I like how we set that up.
Do you know any companies that make maps anymore, Jim? Because I don't think they exist.
Let me Google this.
We're gonna have to do some research. Yeah. Anyway, Roy, thank you so much for joining the show. We talk about people's passion projects, their side hustles, all sorts of things like that. Give us a little bit about you, though, a little bit about your background and where you come from.
All right, so I'm kind of a perpetual side hustler. I graduated with a degree in psychology in 2004, and it was an undergraduate Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology. So I got the best full-time job that you can get with an undergraduate Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology, which was answering the customer service phone calls at the local gas company. So when Jim or Alan, when one of you guys were a deadbeat and you didn't pay your gas bills all winter, and you called the gas company and started screaming at the person who answered the phone because you hadn't paid your bill, and we sent somebody out to shut off service on the first warm day of spring, I was that guy that you called to yell at. So I knew that. Yeah. Yes. So I knew that that wasn't my thing, but I also didn't quite know what to do with my life, right? There were people who were lifers at the customer service call center at the local gas company, and I knew that wasn't for me. Well, in between calls, I actually worked noon to 9 p.m. So after dinner, there was a lot of time between calls. In between calls, I had a lot of time to read books. And I found this book called The Well-Fed Writer. And this book said there are people who get paid to make a living writing for businesses, right? Or the people who get paid to write for businesses, they make their living doing this, and they can actually make a pretty good living as a writer, writing for businesses as this job called a copywriter. Not only that, there's a lot of like freelance opportunity. These people work from home, they have all the freedom, they define like their schedule, all that stuff. And I said, like, this is for me, right? And it wasn't right away, but I very quickly fell down that rabbit hole into this world of, especially for me, direct response copywriting, which is like marketing that has to generate some kind of business result. Mm-hmm. And off and on, it was a side hustle, it was a full-time thing. And like ever since then, I've done some variation on side hustles and full-time things in the marketing space, all the way up to more recently the newsletter and podcast that I do as well. So I don't want to like take the whole 35 minutes to tell my story. So I'll shut up there and like let you guys take that in whatever direction you want to.
Well, my first question is, working at the call center and having the psychology background, I think that's an amazing job, because if somebody calls you and they're at like in a tough spot and their gas has been shut off and they're freaking out on you because nobody's ever like chill about that sort of thing. Were you starting to psychoanalyze those people and be like, okay, why are they the way that they are? And like really breaking that down?
You don't need a psych degree to work in that job and make those kind of analysis. I did actually have somebody tell me that I should be a therapist because I had the patience to deal with, like, she was a landlord with like 10 rental properties that were all screwed up. And I was like, well, I got a degree in psychology, but I'm working here. So yeah.
Was there ever any thought of like you were going to take psychology full time and turn that into, into your possibly your job?
Not really.
I took those classes and I had friends that actually majored in it. No idea. I mean, I was so bad at it. And I wish I would have maybe put a little bit more in on my end and that too, but I was so bad at it, and I can't believe that, people can do that for a full ride of college.
Yeah. Well, my wife went on and she got master's and PhD in psychology. We met in like a summer school psych class. And so she went on and did that. But I think that I mostly got into psychology because I just kind of wanted to figure myself out. Mm-hmm. And once I got the degree, I just I didn't see myself doing the whole like 6 years of grad school to become a PhD. And for me, like it wasn't, it wasn't ever a full-time path that I planned to take.
Yeah. Now I'm curious, like now that, obviously having grown and done so much more, like, do you ever like have a really difficult, customer or client now and you're like reverting back to your patient days of when you had to deal? Like, I bet that taught you some lessons about like, just how to deal with difficult personalities that we all have to do, but not I've never had to deal with someone calling me really, really upset the minute I pick up the phone. That's a different world. So I'm sure you've taken away at least a couple of those lessons away from it.
Oh, for sure. Like, and I think for me, like, even though I stopped studying psychology in 2004 or whatever, for me, that was just the beginning of like being a lifelong learner. Mm-hmm. And getting to know more about myself and then taking that and applying it wherever it was relevant. So if I'm writing marketing or I'm dealing with a client or something like that, like that same introspection that came out of and that motivated my study of psychology, like it definitely like it continues to be beneficial. So like if I'm dealing with a cranky customer or something, it's very easy for me to say, okay, they're probably dealing with some hard stuff right now. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily about me, right? And I think that a lot of people who I don't know, just just take personal development seriously, end up going down that same path of like, suddenly it's useful everywhere. The more you understand yourself, the more you understand other people, and the more patient you end up being with other people, because they're just as effed up as you.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Or you're just as effed up as them, which is the other way to.
A pattern. I mean, the effed up part for sure, but a pattern with our guests is that there's always like, there's a lot of negative experiences and challenging stuff, but there's always something that they take away on each path that then actually, frankly, determines more. And a lot of folks don't realize, I think you realize it. A lot of people we've talked to have been like, that's a good point. I guess that did dictate part of it. And you really take away something on, as you move along. And I think that's, for a lot of people getting in, especially folks like just graduating college or whatever it might be, like that's it. You're going to start in something you probably don't like. Like that's going to be a reality. You're not going to like your first job. You taking away things from it and lessons from it and learning from it and growing from it leads to you doing some amazing things. And you're in the middle of that right now, which is really
well. So like my second job, we can call it my second full-time job, was actually in marketing, right? And I transitioned, and when I went to get the job, I said, listen, you're not going to keep me around for very long. I'm going to work really hard here because I'm trying to develop a track record of success. And so while I'm working with you, we're going to have all sorts of success. But my plan is to become a freelance copywriter. So even though you're hiring me to be the marketing guy at this IT training company, like I have a foot out the door from the moment I'm walking in. And they actually worked hard to retain me. And I stuck with them for like 4.5 years because it was a fun environment. I continued to grow. I continued to earn more, all of that. But also I was doing side hustles all along, like doing freelance copywriting clients and doing, I built a whole little side publishing business and all of that while I was doing that job. But it was like also I recognized that the side hustle is what kept me sane, because like I was bursting to get out. I was interested in so many things. And it was so like, anytime you're working inside somebody else's system, it's very constraining, right? Like the best jobs are the ones that allow you to flourish and develop mastery and have autonomy. But most jobs are not like that.
Sure. Let me ask you a little bit about the side hustles that you were doing at this point, while you were working this job and knowing that, this isn't going to be a long-term thing for you. Were they at all related, or were they stuff that, you were trying different stuff in different fields along the way to see which kind of, picking and choosing to see which one works best for you?
Yeah. So I got clarity, like from reading those first couple books, working for the gas company. I wanted to be in this little world of entrepreneurial direct response marketers, right? And it's like, there's this whole subculture mindset about marketing, all of that, and all these companies and people who teach it and all of that, that it's this community. It's a very small, it feels like a very small community sometimes. And like, I knew that I wanted to be involved with that, but the company that I was working for was not. Like they were a more traditional, like they were an online marketer. They published online IT training for, computer professionals. And I could use some of the principles that I was learning from this whole other world towards being successful there. So like I was running Google ads, and I was writing product descriptions and doing product launches and all sorts of stuff that was marketing, right? But the moment I wanted to like write a long sales letter, which is common in direct response and was even more common then, the owner was like, no, like nobody's going to read all that. Nobody's going to respond to that, despite the fact that there was evidence to the contrary outside of his world. And so like what I was doing was I was holding on to the security of the full-time job, not doing the type of work that I knew that I would eventually want to do, while also using the side hustles to practice the skills for the work that I wanted to do when I was going to go full-time freelance. And so like I would work with more direct response clients. I would connect with more of those people. My side publishing business. So my dad has this hobby of flying model airplanes and building and flying model airplanes. And he had recorded this like VHS video in his shop about how to cut foam wings for model airplanes, which is a very specific topic, right?
Yeah.
But he had some really innovative techniques that like made it maybe one of the best approaches in the world for this, in this very, very tiny specific topic. He'd been selling it on eBay, and it started at like $30 a tape, and people would, it would just get bid up to $30 a tape. And then eventually it was like, he'd kind of saturated the eBay marketplace, and it went down to about $5 a tape, and he was basically breaking even to send it out the door. And I said, could I make a website and promote it how I want to promote it, sell it how I want to sell it, pay for advertising to get people interested? And he said, sure. And so I sat down with the video, and I wrote out like all of the teasers of the content that was in it, and like the story of the video, and put that as a sales page on the website. And I wrote this email campaign that gave people these tips for how to cut model airplanes, that directed people to buy the video, and like how to cut wings, directed people to buy the video, and all of that, and got to do the type of marketing I wanted to do. And so, yes, it was like using the side hustle to develop the skill. And like for a while, I dominated how to cut foam wings for model airplanes on Google. Now, that was like, so I would send money to my dad every month based on the sales we made. And largely what he would do he was part of a model airplane club, so he would buy pizza after their meetings for the club with his money. So that's the kind of money we're talking about. It's not a get rich market. But it was a great place to develop my skills and kind of have this sandbox to play in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's one of the first values of a side hustle, is like developing your skills and having a sandbox to play in.
I love that. It probably takes a little courage to do that, like to step up and be like, I want to try this out, and then have someone agree to it. And I think, and there was probably like, did you have any fear of failure in that, or were you kind of like, let's just see what happens, and like whatever? what was the vibe like?
Yeah, I think it's two sides. Like I'm always afraid of failure. Like
Sure.
I'm always afraid of like market rejection, failure, all of that. I'm always considering it. But also I've learned to like teach myself that failure is a learning opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. So even like approaching a client or something for side or whatever, right? Failure is a learning opportunity. And if you fail fast, you learn fast. Mm-hmm. And also, if you operate from pretty good principles, like not everything is going to fail, right? Mm-hmm. So the principle of asking people to spend money on the video and driving people to the page to where it asks them to spend money on the video, and getting people who are interested to sign up for the email list that drive them to the page, and like attracting that audience based on what they type into Google, all of those principles are pretty sound. And so like, even though I might have feared failure, I still knew that I could try it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, I'm not out that much. And if it does work, the upside is not equal to the downside risk by any stretch of the imagination.
Agreed. That mindset makes a lot of sense. I had that too when I started my speaking world and building a website, putting myself out there. I was like, I really want to do this, and if it doesn't work out, I at least knew that I wanted to do it. It was like, okay, let's give it a whirl. And I mean, it's I still have a lot of areas to grow, and certainly, but I really was like, I don't know. Like, well, if people really want this, I'll know right away. And if they don't, then I'll also know right away. And I went down trying, and there's kind of a level of that, right? And it's like, okay, that, and it took away sort of that like silo of don't do it. It's go ahead, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and I'm back at square one. So that was
So this sounds like that's at least this initial side hustle of selling the videotape. Sounds like it was pre-social media, pretty much. If eBay was a main thing, and doesn't sound like YouTube was kind of a viable option at that point, right?
No, it was more like 2007 to 2010.
Sure. So really, very early YouTube's. eBay was definitely still a place that you could buy that sort of thing and find a market for it. Was that your first kind of exposure as to like how niche the internet can get? Because I would assume that that's kind of, I don't think that
For
there's a ton of people that are looking to cut model airplane wings.
No,
but you
no.
might have cornered, like you said, you cornered the market on it. So
Yeah, like the internet has just so many different little corners of passion. And that was a very clear experience. Like one of the things that I learned is it's always this matter of if you go too narrow, like how to cut foam wings for model airplanes. Like the number of people flying model airplanes is already pretty small, but then the number of people building their own is much smaller because of almost ready to flies. And then the number of people who build their own that want to cut foam wings for them is like smaller still, right? So our market is getting smaller and smaller. And the other thing is that's an aging market. So like there were not a lot of factors in our favor for that. But at the same time, like the people who were there, it was so easy to be profitable because it was so specific. Like if somebody's typing how to cut foam wings for model airplanes or cutting foam wings for model airplanes, and then you have foamwingcutting.com, which is what the website was, and how to cut foam wings for model airplanes, 3 free tips, including the best bow design. Like it's off the charts easy to convert those people. And so it is always this back and forth between, and I'd had the same experience too, like working for the IT training company, by the time somebody is searching for like CCNA training videos or whatever, which was what we're selling at the time, it was really easy to get those people to convert. But there was also a much bigger audience of IT professionals. So it's like all that.
Sure.
But yeah, like the internet's wide open with that stuff.
Yeah. Trust me.
Really loved it.
I've learned.
Yeah, I love the breakdown of like you were like the people who are interested in this, the smaller ones. It's almost like kids who play like a high school like sport, and then the kids that go to college to play it, and then the people that make the pros to play it. It's just varying levels of like less and less people. But it is true. Like, and I think that's actually like the kind of takeaway I have, like mindset wise, is if you find a niche, run with it. Like and keep it going. And I think you're going to find that people will attach the value to that. And to your point, Roy, I think that's like perfect. It's like if people are looking this thing up, I mean, your website speaks for itself, what you created. Yeah. And there's no question this is the right place to go to find what I want. And I think that's brilliant. And it sounds simple, but a lot of people try and make it like a really creative, like let's call it this. And it's like, just call it what it is. And people will find, like that's a good takeaway, and it worked. And it like clearly was something the amount of lessons you took away from that you can build off of, or it was great. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. So let's fast forward a little bit. How does that kind of bring you to the idea of when it's time to leave the marketing company? And does that bring you right to Fractional?
No, there's a big gap between the marketing job and the Fractional CMO and copy chief. So I went off and so that was my little side hustle. My slightly bigger side hustle was working with clients as a freelance copywriter. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that I knew was going to become like my next full-time thing. But it was freelance, right? I was running my own business. So it almost felt like it was just a side hustle become full-time. So in February 2010, my wife and I were about to move across the country, so I couldn't work that full-time job anymore. They couldn't retain me at all. They didn't want me to do any remote work or whatever. And so I said, it's time. And I just doubled down and got the clients that I needed to fill my calendar as a freelance copywriter. And for a while, there wasn't much side hustle because my side hustle just became my full-time thing, right? So I worked with clients in a few different industries doing this direct response thing. And then by 2014, like my ADHD hit again. And it was like, I got to do more than just the client copywriting. And so I launched what's now Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, which is actually, so it was in April 2014. I was talking to somebody and I said, I want to start writing an email every day with like a tip on marketing, right? Can you just sign up for it? I don't care if you stay signed up, but I don't want to be writing to nobody. And since you're talking to me right now, will you sign up? And she signed up. And I don't think she's been a subscriber in a few years. but I just started every day writing this email and publishing it on Breakthrough Marketing Secrets. And pretty consistently since then, Monday through Friday, like in addition to the client work, I've been publishing there. And so developed that as a side hustle. And as part of that, which was always kind of second to the client work, I've done coaching for copywriters. I've sold just like a consultation type services for other people who do what I do. And then I built out a training library, and I offer like access to, it's actually at about 200 hours worth of marketing training right now, as part of like Netflix for copywriting and marketing training, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And then in the last year or so, I've transitioned into more of a leadership role with clients, where instead of being the one who's like banging on the keyboard to make the words come out, I'm more leading the strategy, leading the teams, and who knows what the next side hustle becomes after that, you know. But the Breakthrough Marketing Secrets, which transitioned from a daily email to like a podcast and video around the beginning of the pandemic, like that has continued to be a pretty solid side hustle for me.
Okay. So the theme I kind of get from all of that is that like life kind of pushes you into that direction, into that next thing. And you could either, go, well, this is the end of the line for this, or you could pivot. And I think that you've done a really good job of that. Not only to pivot into being like, well, I'm moving across the country. And like you said, remote work was really not what it is now. So I'm sure that people were like, okay, well, let's dive into copywriting for you, and then when the pandemic hits and then maybe budgets get tighter across the board, well, let's turn this thing, from a daily email, let's turn it into a podcast. People have time to listen to this sort of thing. So tell me a little bit about, when you really kind of dove and made that decision to be like, I think this could be more beneficial as a podcast. And then, in addition to the newsletter.
I've been asked over and over for years by people saying, hey, like, I like your emails, but I'd like to hear them. I want to be able to just listen. And also my coach at the time was having a lot of success on YouTube. And it was like, he explained to me how simple the process was. Like, if you have the content in you, once you get accustomed to the medium, it's pretty easy to get the content out, right? So a lot of people think, like, my daily emails were between 1,000 and 2,000 words, and people would be like, whoa, like, how do you write that much? But it was like 45 minutes. It was just, I got into the flow, I got into the rhythm of it, and I would just bang it out. And it's kind of the same thing with the podcast. Like, I have a flow, I have a rhythm, and it was about this recognition that the world has really gone multimedia. And with the pandemic, I felt, for whatever reason, I thought it would be easier to do a daily podcast or a daily like video plus audio plus the emails anyway, to announce them. It's not actually easier, by the way.
Yeah, I'm aware. Trust me, we make a lot of content too. I'm aware.
Yeah. But it was just kind of all these factors coming together where I felt like multimedia was where I needed to be, and not just text. The other thing is, most of my training is video-based training. And so if my consumption of my paid products is video, I thought, why not have the media match between those two? So there was a little bit of that strategy involved too.
For sure. And I think that was going to be my next question too, was there that learning curve of like audio and video production and stuff like that? Because it can be a whole new world once you get into it. Everybody wants to be a YouTuber or whatever, but then when they have to sit down at an editing suite and figure it out, like, but you seem to have had that already.
So, so I actually, I was, I've been doing DJing and music production since 2000, and have played around with multimedia production tools on my computer since that time. And so I was very comfortable. The big thing for me is I decided I didn't want to edit videos. And so I had to figure out how to use OBS Studio. Now, when I actually do interviews now, I have an assistant who edits. But for most of my solo content, I'm actually using OBS Studio, and I'm doing scene changes and outros and all of that live, which was a learning curve. But it's one of those things, going back to the fear of failure. If you approach it like, I'm probably going to fail a couple times, but then I'll figure it out. Well, now, like, when I hit record and then I hit stop, the video production content or portion of the episode is done.
Yeah. So you do everything live still through OBS?
Yeah, still through OBS. There's probably a better tool, but I got OBS set up and it's easy.
Yeah, that is the stuff that like Twitch streamers used. And basically I've thought about doing, like our bonus episodes and things like that, where we have multiple cameras set up and then just literally clicking through while Jim and I are talking. But there's a lot of tools out there that can help with that sort of thing, but that's a unique strategy. And I think that it works though, because you do get the end product looks really great from that too. So you might have a side hustle as like a segment producer for like a news station on top of this too, because there's a lot of moving parts literally that go into that. Yeah.
Yes. No, it's something like I took like radio classes in college at the local community radio station, and we even I recorded 1 hour-long jazz show that was broadcast at the end of this radio class that I took. And like that, honestly, like that stuff is really fun to figure out for me. If it's not fun for you to figure out, it's probably not the right side hustle for you.
Right. Oh, totally.
But yeah, like embrace the things that keep you interested. That's a big thing with the side hustles for me is, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but I know a lot of people who are entrepreneurial or who do side hustles are diagnosed or diagnosable as ADHD. Not everybody, just because you're entrepreneurial does not mean you have ADHD, but I am actually diagnosed. And so I've learned a lot about ADHD. And this one distinction jumped out at me as like the defining like factor that helped me contextualize so much of it in my life, is that people who have a normal nervous system are what we might call importance-based. So succeeding in this class in school is important. Therefore, I'm going to do the work to succeed in this class. People who have ADHD have an interest-based nervous system, which is, if it is interesting to me, it's going to get all my attention. If it's not interesting to me, I'm going to struggle to give it attention, even if I know it's important, right? And so I would always, like, for a long time, I struggled with one class at a time in school. The class that was least interesting to me, I would like really struggle all semester long and then maybe pull it out at the end. But then I do really well in other classes that were interesting to me. Well, I learned that like I have to keep my interest-based nervous system going. I have to find what's interesting to me. And so I think that's part of the whole side hustle thing for me, is recognizing that like, if I don't have something interesting pulling me forward, and often those things that are interesting start as side hustles. If I don't have something that's interesting pulling me forward, I'm going to really stagnate. And
yeah. No, I get that. And now I'm concerned that I have ADHD. I should get
the fellow ADHDer. I would very much vibe with that.
Yeah.
That's a very good breakdown of how I operate too. And I'm like, yeah, that's like the things I think I probably should be doing and I have no interest in. It's like, that makes sense. That's why I don't want to focus on it. But yeah, it's true. You kind of, your mind's like, I like every day when I'm writing emails, I'll go from one to the other, and I'm not like finishing one, you know, I have to like, oh, this popped up. And it's like, that's why I'm exhausted when the day's over. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to do about 19 things at the same time. So yeah, and then once something carves my interest, I do dive in and I do really, you know, take it on. So I think that's spot on. And Alan, that's might be time to grab a little test and see what happens.
Yeah, honestly, I might need to. So we are going to start winding down here, but before we do that, I do want to ask Roy, is there something that you think has really maintained consistent, like throughout your, various side hustles into your position with Fractional and everywhere else? Is there like a skill that you think has just kind of always been there from one thing to the other?
Probably the most important skill in my life is just is communication. Like not just communication, like trying to get myself heard, but communication, like trying to understand what my market wants, what drives them, what interests them, and then finding a way to connect what I have to that. And so that applies to the client work that I've done for copywriting. That applies to anytime I'm making an offer in the marketplace. It applies to the stuff that I'm doing now with like the fractional CMO role is something that's defined based on what the client needs. So the communication starts with a lot of listening and asking good questions. And then communication is also like, I've been a paid persuasive communicator ever since I got my start in marketing, and arguably I was a paid persuasive communicator when I was doing customer service. So yeah, it's kind of been there the whole time.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the more valuable skills to have too in any medium, really any side hustle, is you have to listen and understand to your customer, but then to effectively communicate with another business owner or a client or whoever it may be along the way, I think is super, super crucial. And if it's something that you're able to do well, that's something you definitely need to harness as well. So Roy, this has been a blast talking to you, and definitely like, hearing about all the different side things that you've done along the way. And I'm sure we could have even gotten into some more too. But if people want to find out more about you, where would be the best place to do that? And don't forget, plug the podcast and newsletter as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the podcast and email are at breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com. That's the best place to go. You can sign up for the email. You get links to the video and audio versions of the episode. You can, of course, look it up on YouTube. You can look it up in your favorite podcast player. And so you can look up Breakthrough Marketing Secrets anywhere, but breakthroughmarketingsecrets.com is the place to go there. And if you want to know more about working with me directly as a fractional CMO or copy chief, it is a fairly narrow target market that I work with. But you can find out all that information at royfurr.com. That's royfurr.com.
Easy enough.
Perfect. Yep. There we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us and being able to talk with us. Thank you for being a guest here on the show. And if you're listening to our show for either the first time or the 64th or 65th time, depending on whatever that title tells you, up, down, left, or right of us, thank you for listening. You can find us wherever you get your podcast. We are Hustling Sideways everywhere. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We are on YouTube, and we're on TikTok as well. If you want to be a guest, either virtually or in this room with me and Jim, please send us an email over at hustlingsideways@gmail.com. We will be back next week with a new episode. And Jim,
keep on hustling.